Student, today I am taking class 8 social science history chapter 6 colonialisms and the city, the story of an imperial capital. Now here we are going to study about what happened to the cities under colonial rules. Which cities we call the presidency cities during that time? How many Delhis before New Delhi? How they make the New Delhi. All these we study in detail in this topic. So you see first, see what happened to the cities under colonial rules. You see, we know that how the life in the countryside, definitely it will change after the establishment of British power. So many changes happen in the life of the peoples, in the society, so many things changed. So what happened to the cities during the same period? So see, the answer it will be depend on the kind of town or the city we are discussing, that we know the reasons. Here the city, the history of temple town like Madurai will not be the same as that of manufacturing town like Dhaka, or a port like Surat, or the town that simultaneously served many different functions. So you see, in most part of the western world, modern cities, they emerged with industrialization. That is the main reason. In Britain, the industrial cities like Leeds and Manchester grow rapidly. In which century? In the 19th century and the 20th centuries. As more people sought jobs, housings and other facilities in these places they require. However, when we see this, unlike Western Europe, what about India? So Indian cities did not expand as rapidly in the 19th century. Question come, why was this so? Why it is not? Because in the late 18th century, Calcutta, Bombay and Madras rose in importance as presidency cities. So questions come, what is called presidency cities? No, before the British rule, do you know the trading centers, also known as port towns of Machilipatnam, Surat and the Seringapatam, they were prosperous towns during that time. But in the late 18th century, the British, they established these presidency cities like Calcutta, Bombay and Madras as the center of British power in the different regions of the India. So it will be changed. This led to deurbanization of the earlier port cities. Do you know, even Delhi was reduced to just a provincial town initially under the British. Early it was big, but how it will be? So by the early provincial town, initially they are under the British. So by early 20th century, only 11% of Indians were city dwellers. Mostly they are all living in the villages. How many Delhis before New Delhi? See, Delhi had remained the capital of India for over 1,000 years, although with some gaps. Now 14 capital cities have existed, one after another, on a small area of 60 square miles land on the left bank of Yamuna river during that time. And see, at that time Delhi became an important center of Sufi culture. Do you know? It had several dargahs, khanqahs and eidgahs. In addition, many places of worship coexisted with open squares. There was a water channel in the centers of main roads. It gave Delhi its unique character early. See, there was a sharp division between the rich and poor of the city. See, havelis or mansions, these were surrounded by mud houses of poor. At that time, usually men, mostly they enjoyed the colorful world of poetry and the dance. Now, making of New Delhi. What happened during that time when they started making New Delhi? So in 1803, the British gained control of Delhi after defeating the Marathas. So they got the power. Since the capital of British India was Calcutta earlier, the Mughal emperor was allowed to continue living in the palace complex in the Red Fort. The modern city was known it today developed only after 1911 when Delhi became the capital of British India. Demolishing past, how it will be destroyed. Now when we see before 1857, Delhi developed in somewhat different way than other colonial cities. How? See, as it did not hold much importance for the British, but in the presidency cities, Indians and the British people, they live in separate areas of the city. When the Indians where they are living, that is called black areas, and the British well laid out area, that white area. See, in Delhi, the British live along with the wealthier Indians in the walled cities, and they enjoyed Urdu, Persian culture. They participated in local festival also. Now Delhi College, it was established in 1792, leading to an intellectual flowering with Urdu language and its base. So the period from 1830 to 1857, it is considered as the Renaissance, a period of developing period of Delhi. Do you know? However, these change with the revolt of 1857. After the what type of changes occur? When the Mughal king Bahadur Shah, he agreed to become the leader of the uprising on recapturing Delhi in September 1857. So what happened? The British took revenge on the rebels and plundered the cities. What they done? They forcing the population to take shelter outside the city. So in this way it will be changed. Delhi after 1857 revolt, after this revolt of 1857, what is the condition of Delhi? You see, to prevent further rebellion, the British exiled the King Bahadur Shah to Burma, now it is known as Myanmar, dismantle his court, raising his place to build barrack for the British troops in their place. So in this way they destroyed. To rid the city of its Mughal past, what they done? The area around the Red Fort was completely cleared of gardens, pavilions and mosques. As the British wanted a clear ground, why they demolished? Because they want a clear ground for the security reasons. Mosques in particular were either they destroyed or put in other uses. 1/3 of the city was demolished and its canal all will be filled up. In this way they change. During 1870, the British walls of Shahjahanabad were broken. Why they had broken? Because they want to establish railway and to allow the city to expand beyond the walls. So what the British done? The British now began living in the sprawling civil lines, area that came up in the north. So the Delhi College was turned into school and shut down in 1877. After that, the British has planned they will make the new capital. Planning of a new capital. Do you know? Being fully aware of symbolic importance of Delhi, the Britishers organized a grand darbar there to display their power with pomp and show. So what they done? A darbar to acknowledge Queen Victoria as the Empress of India was held in 1877. So in 1911, King George V was crowned in England and a darbar was held in Delhi. Why? To celebrate the occasion. And the decision to shift, and they made the decision to shift the capital of India from Calcutta to Delhi was announced at this darbar. So in this way they plan to make the new capital. New Delhi. Do you know? A new 10 square mile city of Resina Hill was called a New Delhi. you know, which was built south of the existing city as the new capital of India. Architect Edward Lutyens and Herbert Baker, who designed Pretoria, the South African capital, designed the new city and its building. The city was built over the next 20 years. Now the feature of the government buildings, like what type of features, like Viceroy Palace, now it is called the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and the Secretariat buildings were borrowed from different periods of Indian imperial history, but the overall look was that it was all these classical Greece. Now you see the next. To ensure that it was totally different from the old city, what they done, it was designed with broad, straight street lines with sprawling mansions and set in the middle large compound. Do you know, as the British architecture, they felt that overcrowded spaces were unhygienic, unhealthy and disease causing, so they ensured that New Delhi had to have good water supply, sewage disposals and drainage facilities, and it had to be green with trees and parks to ensure fresh air and an adequate supply of oxygen. So they changed all these things. Now when we talking about the how they make the Delhi, New Delhi, but during that time there was a type of partition of India and Pakistan. So how the life in the time of partition? See, the partition of India in 1947, it led to a massive of population swelling the population of Delhi with a large number of refugees who came from the Pakistan. This caused a lot of change in the occupation of the peoples and the culture of the city. Do you know? The Muslims who migrate to Pakistan, mostly they were artisans, petty traders and laborers, and now they are replaced by Hindus and Sikh refugees who were earlier rural landlords, lawyers, teachers, traders and small shopkeepers. Now these refugees were forced to change their occupation to become, now they become hawkers, vendors, carpenters and ironsmiths. The refugees stayed temporarily in the camps, schools, military barracks and the gardens, as well as they occupy vacant houses. Others were housed in newly developed refugees colonies of the Delhi, where they settled, with an urban culture based on, during that time, on Urdu being overshadowed by the new taste during that time and sensibilities in the food, dress and the art. Inside the old city, what is happening there? See, the system of canals for transporting water and effluents built earlier had been neglected and had broken down in 19th century. Even the system of ballards, means step wells, was not functional. Thus, at the end of 19th century, the Shahjahani drains were closed and a new system of open surface drains was introduced. But this system was soon overburdened due to growing population. So, in contrast, much money was spent on a new drainage system at the New Delhi area. But the Delhi Municipal Committee was unwilling to spend money on drainage system for old Delhi. Now, declines of Haveli. How the Haveli declines? See, the Mughal aristocracy had earlier lived in grand mansion more than hundreds in Delhi, called Havelis, which were large walled compounds with mansions, courtyards and fountains. Do you know, Haveli housing many families consisted with many structures both for working and living peoples. They are with courtyard and open space separately for men and women. Now, some of them including housing for cart drives, tent pitchers, torch bearers as well as for accountant, clerks and household servants, all who are working in the palace. Under the British rule, many of the Mughal amirs were unable to maintain these large establishment which was made earlier, and thus these Havelis began to be subdivided and sold. In some, the fronts were turned into shops. The front part, it is turned into shops and warehouses, but many fell into decay and destroyed. Now, colonial bungalows in New Delhi, how they made, how structure is. The main features of colonial bungalows in New Delhi were, the first, do you know? The colonial bungalows in New Delhi were totally different. It was totally different from the Havelis. They were being meant for nuclear family. Nucleus means small family, like that. For them they made. There were mostly a large single storied building with verandas on three sides set in 1 or 2 acres of open ground. Kitchens, stables and servant quarters were in a separate space for the main house. The municipality began to plan. How they done planning? Do you know? The census of 1931, it revealed that the walled city was horribly crowded with as many as 19% per acre. So while the New Delhi had only about 3% per acre. So earlier in 1888, the Lahore Gate improvement scheme was planned. It was planned by Robert Clark for the walled cities residents and to draw them away to a new type of market square around which shops would be built. So land was divided into regular area for the constructions of neighborhood. However, this scheme remained incomplete and it did not help to decongest the city. Now, the Delhi Improvement Trust, which was set up in 1936, built area like Daryaganj South for wealthy Indians, in which the houses were grouped around parks, and within the houses, what they done, spaces were divided with different members of the same family having their own private spaces within the home. Now, so we had finished how they made the change and made the New Delhi, how they constructed the new, destroyed old buildings and constructed the New Delhi, and how they made good places for the white peoples and how the other peoples are living. So we will see the first question. Who lived in the white areas in cities such as Madras? The British and other European, they lived in the white areas in cities such as Madras. What is meant by deurbanization? Deurbanization, it is basically a process by which more and more people leave towns and cities due to the reduction of their political or commercial importance. During the late 18th century, the earlier trade centers of Machilipattam, Surat and Seringpattam were deurbanized as trade. It is shifted to the presidency cities of Madras, Bombay and Calcutta due to British rule in the country. Similarly, the earlier centers of regional power collapsed when the British defeated the local rulers. Next question, why did the British choose to hold a grand darbar in Delhi? To hold a grand darbar in Delhi, although it was not the capital. Reason, you know, the British understood the symbolic importance of Delhi, and it had been the place where the Mughal king ruled earlier. So it has also become an important stronghold during 1857 revolt. That is the main reason. So which threatened the collapse of British rule in India. So the British thought that it is important to celebrate the British power in Delhi with pomp and show. So thus the Darbar was held in 1857 to acknowledge Queen Victoria as the Empress of India. And later in December 1911, a Darbar was held in Delhi to celebrate the crowning of the King George V, and this time the British announced that shifting of Indian capital to Delhi, and these displays were held to show the people the ultimate power and supremacy of the British over India. Next question, how did the old city of Delhi change under the British rule? You know, the old city of Delhi was walled city and it is characterized by mosques, havelis, crowded mohallas, narrows and winding lanes, as well as a different type of water channels. Before the revolt, the British lived it by adjusting to its culture. However, after the revolt, they wanted to rid all these canals and fill up. Now, how did the partition affect in Delhi? In 1947, due to partition of India, a massive transfer of population took place in both the sides of the new border. As a result, the population of Delhi is swelled by about 5 lakh people, and the kinds of jobs people they change, the culture of the city also become different. The skills and occupations of the refugees were different from those early. It was replaced because those who went to Pakistan, mostly they were artisans, petty traders and laborers, and the new migrants were rural landlords, lawyers, teachers, traders and small shopkeepers. So this large migration changed the social environment of Delhi. Now, in next class we will study the urban culture and all. History chapter 7, weavers, iron smelter and factory owners. As we studied how the new cities will be developed, how the capital will be transferred in the early. Now here we are going to study about the industrial revolution. What type of industries established in India and in the world, and how it will be declined, what are the reasons behind that, all we will study in the detail. So here we were iron smelters and factory owners. So first, how the Indian textile and it took the place in the world market, what the words tell us history about these factories, Indian textile, what is the condition of Indian textile in European markets, what are the major weaving centers in India, Indian weavers, what are the conditions, how the Indian textile decline, how the cotton mills again come up, what is the importance of sword of Tipu Sultan and wood steels, what are the reasons for the decline of iron smelting, iron and steel factories come up in India and TISCO. All these we will study in detail. Now you see, the textile industries and iron and steel industries, these were a crucial for the industrial revolution in the modern world. In early, there was a textile industry developed. See, mechanized production of these cotton textile made Britain the foremost industrial nation in the 19th century, while later the growth of iron and steel industries from the 1950 made it known as the workshop of the world. So these are the two industries set up earlier. See, the industrialization of the Britain had close connection with the conquest and colonization of India. That is the main reason. Do you know, English East India Company, they are interested in trade and led to the occupation of territory, and the patterns of trade changed over the decades. So in the late 18th century, the company was buying goods in India, and what they are doing? They are exporting them to England and Europe. Why? Because they want to making more profit through the sale. That is why they are purchasing here and sending. See, British industrialists, they saw India was a vast market for their industrial products, and so manufactured goods from the Britain began flooding India, and these adversely affect Indian crafts and industries. Now, what is the position of Indian textile in the world market? Do you know? Around 1750, before the British they conquered Bengal, India was the world's largest producers of cotton textile, and do you know, the quality of Indian cotton is very good in the world. Indian textiles were extensively traded in Southeast Asia as well as in the West and Central Asia during that time. From the 16th century, these European trading company, they began to buy Indian textiles. Why? they are purchasing here and they sell in Europe. So this flourishing trade and exquisite craftsmanship of these Indian workers is highlighted by the words still used popularly in English and other language. So what type of words we are using for this? So word tell us history about this. See, history of Indian textile through words. First one is muslin. Did you heard this word muslin cloth? See, the word muslin means a very finely woven textile use. These are used for making clothes. The name of this cloth is derived from Mosul, a town in Iraq, where European traders first saw a fine cotton cloth from India, which was brought from Indian by Arab traders. Next, calico. What is calico? The word calico is a generic name for all cotton textile used for making clothes. This name is derived from Calicut, a port town in Kerala where the Portuguese first landed in India and they took back Indian cotton textile to Europe, where they came to call calico. Next word, chint. The word chint, meaning a printed cotton cloth, is term derived from Hindi word chint, a cloth with small and colorful flowery design from the 1680s. There started a craze for printed Indian cotton textile in England and Europe mainly because it was designed floral design. So that was a big demand, line texture and the relative cheapness. For the three reasons why there is a good demand of these cotton textile: beautiful floral design, line textures and relative cheap with other cloths. Now, bandhana. Do you know the word bandhana, which refers to any bright colored and printed scarf which is tied around the neck or head, is derived from the Hindi word for tying bandhana. See, this variety of brightly colored cloth is produced through a method of tying and dyeing. So the popularity of this Indian textile is exemplified by typical order of for near about 5,89,000 pieces of 98 varieties of cotton and silk cloths called piece goods. These were sent by East India Company to its representative in Calcutta in 1730 for executing within 2 years. Indian textiles. What is the position of Indian textile in European market? See, the popularity of Indian textile during the early 18th century varied in European to wool and silk makers in England. They began protesting against the import of Indian cotton textile. Why? Because the people prefer these cotton textiles. So their business are going down and Indian market will be increased too much in the Europe. That is why they started protesting against this cotton textile. Now they made act that is called Calico Act. Do you know? In 1720 the British government banned the use of printed cotton textile in England and the law was called Calico Act. Do you know? At that time the textile industries had just begun to develop in England and they unable to compete with Indian textile. So the English producers, they wanted a security in the market within the country by preventing the entry of Indian textile. So the first to grow under government protection was the calico printing industries. That is the reason, and Indian designs were now initiated and printed in England on white muslin or plain unbleached Indian cloth. So they made this Calico Act. New inventions. What type of new inventions done? Do you know? Competition with Indian textile led to search for technological innovations with the invention of, now they invented spinning jenny. Do you know? A cotton spinning machine with several spindles, and by John Kay in 1764, and the steam engine It was revolutionized cotton textile weaving by Richard Arkwright in 1786. However, Indian textile continued to dominate the world trade. It doesn't affect by these spinning jenny and all, but till the end of 18th century, with the Dutch, the French and the English trading companies making large profit. Next, see that. Major weaving centers in India. Which are the major weaving centers in India? During the early 19th century, the textile production was concentrated in 4 regions in India. Bengal was one of the most important centers, with Dhaka being famous for its Malmal and Jamdani weaving. And another cluster of cotton weaving center was along with Coromandel coast in South India. It is stretching from Madras to northern Andhra Pradesh, while India's western coast contain many important weaving centers in Gujarat. What is the condition of Indian weavers? How they are doing the work? See, weavers usually, who are the Indian weavers? Weavers mostly they belong to communities specializing in weaving skills being passed from generation to generation. Now, some weaving communities, they were in Tati weavers from the Bengals, the Julahas and Momin weavers from North India, Sale, Kakolar and Devangs from South India. These are the different communities of Indian weavers in India. The art of weaving, how they are weaving these cloths and printing. See, spinning was mostly done by the women, with the thread being spun and the charkha and rolled on the takli, and both being household spinning instrument, and the women are doing in their house. Weaving was usually done by the man on hand operated looms. For colored cloths, dyeing was done by the dyer, and they dyed the different colors called rangres. Those who are dyeing the cloths, these threads, they are called rangres. And for printed clothes, printing was done by specialists, block printers known as chipikar. Now, both from particular communities, livelihoods of millions. Now, in this way the work is divided, and livelihoods of millions of the Indian dependent on these handloom weavings and its associated occupation. Now, how the Indian textile declines, what the condition will be become these people. See, the development of cotton industries in Britain, these affected the textile producers in India in several ways. First, as cotton industry in British it developed, they gave competition to Indian textile in the Europe and American market. Now, second one, high import duties in Britain and Calico Act made it difficult for export these textile to that countries. Third, British manufacturers, they started manufacturing cotton textile, they replaced Indian textile and their traditional market in Africa, America and Europe by the beginning of 19th century. So, by the 1830, British cotton clothes flooded in Indian market. That is also a reason. By the 1880s, the 2/3 of all the cotton clothes worn by Indians were made by the British cotton cloth. This affected the entire textile industries in India, and thousands of the rural women lost their jobs. The women in Bengal were the worst hit because now they are having no work. At the time of national movement, can this cloth will be also affect? Yes. At the time of national movement, non-cooperation movement, Gandhiji urged the people to boycott imported textile and use hand-woven Indian cloths. Soon, khadi became the symbol of nationalism, and the charkha, it was put in the center of Indian National Congress in 1931. However, some types of cloths with intricate designs and embroidery could not be made by the machines, so these also had a good demand in the European market. Moreover, the British manufacturer did not produce coarse cloth, and the coarse cloths were popular among poor in India, so handloom weaving did not stop entirely. Now, cotton mills come up. How the cotton mills now they came up? From the early 19th century, we see raw cotton was exported from the Bombay port to China and the England. So the first cotton mill where it will be established. The first cotton mill in India was set up in Bombay in 1854. Do you know the number of mills in Bombay rose to over 84 by year 1900. Raw cotton was easily available in Bombay. Why? Because it is located in close area where the cotton is growing well. So earlier Bombay had been an important port for raw cotton export. Do you know the Parsi and the Gujarati businessmen, they set up their mills here in Bombay and in other cities like Ahmedabad in 1861, Kanpur in 1862. Do you know the thousands of the poor patients, artisans and agricultural laborers, they migrated to the cities. Why? Because they have to work in the mills. As the growth of cotton mills, they created a new employment opportunity. Initially, the Indian textile industries, it faced mainly many problems. What type of problems they face? Like first one, the mills found too difficult to compete with this cheap textile which is imported from Britain. Second, in most countries, the government supported industrialization by imposing heavy duties on import. That is the second reason. And it was only during the First World War that cotton textile industry in India got a boost. When textile imports from Britain declined and Indian factories had to produce cloth for the military. Now, next we are taking about the iron and steel industry. Now here sword of Tipu Sultan and wood steel. How? Do you know that Tipu Sultan ruled in Mysore till 1799? He fought for wars with the British and died fighting with his sword in his hand. Do you know? Tipu's sword are now part of valuable collections in museum in England. What is Tipu Sultan's sword? See, the sword was very hard with a very sharp edge having flowing water pattern. It was made from a special type of carbon steel that is called wood steel. And the flowing water pattern come from very small carbon crystals which is embedded in the iron. So with this iron, Tipu Sultan's sword was made. Wood steel. The wood steel, an Anglicized word derived from the Kannada word ukku. In Telugu it is called hukku and in Tamil and Malayalam it is called urukku, meaning steel. Do you know? Earlier the steels were produced all over South India by mixing iron with charcoal in small clay pot in smelting furnace. Smelting means they are melting this iron. By intricate temperature, they control of the furnace and steel ingots were produced. So in this way, they are taking iron, they are putting in the furnace and they are heating. So it will be melted. In this way, they are giving shape. Making Tipu Sultan's sword. How made? Do you know? Francis Bichan had toured Mysore in 1800 and has given a good description of the technique of wood steel manufacturing. Even Michael Faraday, the legendary scientist, he spent 4 years studying the properties of Indian woods during 1818 to 1822. Abandoned furnace in village. Do you know iron smelting in India was fairly common till the end of 19th century? Do you know the furnace was usually made up of clay and sun-dried bricks, with the smelting being done by the men, and while the women worked the bellows, they pumping the air that kept the charcoal burning. In this way they are making. See, reasons for the decline of iron smelting. Why the iron smelting? The work is going on in these places will be destroyed or decline. At this time, a series of famines coupled with strict, the government had made so many forest laws and act. So there is a strict implementation of enter in the forest, they made the forest law. This led to the decline of iron smelting because the forest law prevented the people. They will not allowed to enter in the reserve forest. By this result, they are not getting a charcoal which is required for the smelting process. Further, the iron smelters had to pay a very large amount of tax to the forest department for every furnace they use. So this reduced their income. In addition with this, the iron and steel was being imported from Britain. Now, ironsmith began using imported iron for manufacturing utensils and implements. So that is also a biggest reason. This reduced the demand for iron produced by the local smelters, but the early 20th century, the artisans producing iron and steel faced a new competition. Now, how the iron and steel factories came up in India. In the year 1904, American geologist Charles Well and the Dorabji Tata discovered iron ore in the hill of Chhattisgarh. However, the location did not have good sources of water nearby. That is the biggest problem, which is essential for running an iron and steel factory. Ultimately, with the help of Agarias, do you know who are Agarias? It is a community of iron smelters. They are doing smelting of irons. The Tata found a large area of iron ore reserves on the bank of the river Subarnarekha. TISCO. Now it is established in India. So this steel manufacturing plant of Tata Iron and Steel Company TISCO, it was set up there with the production of starting in year 1912. This was developed into township and now which is now known as Jamshedpur. Now this was an opportune time for TISCO because there is an expansion of railways in India and was taking place, and soon in 1940 there was a first world war broke out. So there is a good demand of this. So steel which is produced in Britain now had to meet the demands in the wars in Europe. So imports of these British steel into India, it is declined, and the Indian railways that was expanding at that time. So this turned a TISCO for the supply of the rails. So in this way this industry will be developed well during that time because there was a big demand of iron and steel. TISCO also produced carriage wheels and shells for war. By the 1919, the colonial government was buying 90% of the steel manufactured by the TISCO. Gradually, TISCO became the biggest steel industries within the British Empire. Now, after the war, as the nationalist movement developed and the industrial class became strong, so the demand for garment production grew louder. Now, struggling to retain its control over India, so British government had to concede many of these demands in the last decades of colonial rules. So here today we study about the iron, cotton textile industries and iron and steel industries, how the cotton textile industries early and what are the conditions became down, what are the reasons behind that, what are the lives of the weavers, and we studied about the iron and steel industries, how the earlier the smelters are doing this process, and when the Britishers had made so many laws, so what happened, how their life will be destroyed, and in the later how a TISCO will be developed and established in the India. So thank you. In the next class I will take the chapter 8.